Hello friends, good morning and welcome to the EduSat Network. Our topic of discussion is part of our ongoing series on great literary texts, and friends, today we specifically talk about Shakespeare's Hamlet. And friends, to talk about this we have in the studio our subject expert Dr. Anand Prakash, retired professor of English, University of Delhi, and he is also the chief editor of the Journal of Drama Studies and the Journal of Literature Studies, both being international journals. And friends, with this brief introduction I welcome sir to the studio. So, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Urvashi, and welcome viewers. Today's topic, as Urvashi has announced, is Shakespeare's Hamlet. And Hamlet has a special place, in world literature. Hamlet is very popular in India, and I think I told you in one of the earlier discussions also that Hamlet has evoked such great interest in literary circles that there has been a magazine coming from India, which is titled Hamlet Studies, and that magazine lasted for 25 years, which was a great tribute to Shakespeare, the writer of Hamlet. I start with a general statement, and that is that Hamlet seems to me, at least, to be closest to the modern times. Even though it was composed in the early years of the 17th century, 1603, 1604, that's the time of its composition and presentation. Yet, 400 years later, more than 400 years later, if we have to relate to one text that Shakespeare wrote, that text would be Hamlet. And there are different reasons for this. We'll keep this particular theme statement in mind, that Hamlet seems to be very particularly relevant to our situations, to our concerns, to our times. And all that I say should, fall under the, perspective of this statement. I start with this general statement, and then I go over to the next one, which merely explains, what I said in the beginning, that it's a play with multiple discourses, the same as is true about us in the 21st century. We have a large number of discourses, and Shakespeare in this play is able to present many discourses, because of which there is no agreement on this text regarding its meaning, regarding its thematic relevance, regarding its closeness to human life, regarding its character of ideology, etc., etc. So, which are these multiple discourses? If one has to count them, there will be many more than I would count, but then the major ones that I have in mind are, for instance, politics and the state. This is one discourse. The second discourse would be the family. The third would be the generation of the youth. The fourth would be the human individual. The fifth would be areas of society outside the plot. And then last one that I have in my list is the layers of themes in the play. So imagine so much has been squeezed into this play, and it has been specifically presented as a combination of all these elements, all these factors, all these themes, because of which in one way or the other the audience gets a kind of appeal from this play that is not possible in the case of other plays written by Shakespeare. So I start with the first discourse that is there as a predominant discourse in the play, and that is the political discourse. There is politics in the play. There is a political vision in the play. There is a critique of the political structure in the play. There is also a very detailed representation of the things that state is supposed to do, and it's not merely a king, it's also the state. So let's see, because the plot line also is revolving around the state. So, so far as the state part is concerned, the politics part is concerned, the play starts with a reference to, a new king taking over the country Denmark, and this new king is surrounded by controversies. People are discussing in their homes, on the streets, etc., in whispers, that this perhaps is not the king that they deserved, this is not the king who is legitimate. He can also be called one, who conspired against the earlier king, got him killed, and then married his wife and assumed the throne. So if this kind of a statement is made right in the beginning by the characters in the first scene itself, directly or indirectly, that shows that Shakespeare is basically talking about the behavior of the king in the present circumstances. The plot line goes like this, that this king takes over, and well, he has to face indirectly the presence of, the very telling presence of, a person called Hamlet. Hamlet, who is the son of the previous king, who died in mysterious circumstances. So Hamlet is there in the play. Hamlet is there in Denmark. Hamlet was at the time of his father's death away from the country, but then he came back, and then he stays on here. And the tussle begins the very moment Hamlet steps into the country. So we have the king all the time in constant conflict with the king, and the two are keeping a watch on each other. And Hamlet has got this inkling, and then that is being proved more and more as the play unfolds, that the king actually is the murderer. But Hamlet has to be sure first, so that he can take some action against him. And towards the end, when the two confront each other, and Hamlet has the proof of a sort that this person was the murderer, then the conflict intensifies, and at the end of which both King Claudius and Hamlet die. And the death closes the play, and one can say that the play is a kind of a tragedy, because it went on from one point where the conflict began to the last point where the two adversaries, the king and his opposite, the person who stood opposite to him, both of them die. So this is what the plot line is, and in the middle of this, in the middle of these 2 points, from where Hamlet enters the scene and when he dies, etc., there are a large number of processes that are seen. The king is always keeping a watch on the movements of his foster son, because Hamlet's mother has been now married to King Claudius, and the mother is involved in the conflict all the time, and the king is having sleepless nights, and he is also feeling guilty inside himself, and Hamlet, of course, is more or less totally distraught. And in order to avoid that there is a kind of disturbance in him, he also assumes the identity of a mad person, which in the play is supposed to be antic disposition. He assumes antic disposition, the stance of the mad person, because of which he is able to confuse the characters in the play. And till the end, the king is thinking whether this person is talking sanely, whether he is talking seriously, or whether he is only commenting on things half seriously. So this is the plot, and since it's a kind of a conflict between two adversaries in the play, so one can say that they are playing tricks with each other. There are references to other countries also. There is a reference to Denmark, apart from Denmark, Norway. There is a reference to England. Hamlet is supposed to be sent to England. He's on the way, but then he comes back, and so it's a kind of international arena, in which this kind of political battle is being fought. And there are 2 or 3 kings who are in constant touch with each other, and the king is telling the court, using certain other people wrongly mostly against the king. He's spreading rumors. Then he also sets a very big dignitary of the state called Polonius after Hamlet to keep watch on him, and that person is willingly being of service to the king. So this is the political discourse, and there are lines like, time is out of joint and I am supposed to set it right. If time is out of joint, then generally it has to be put back on the joint only through politics, through right kind of politics and political behavior. So this is what Hamlet says. Then the second in command, that is Polonius, he's keeping a watch not only on Hamlet, not only on the king, not only on the queen, but also on his son, also on his daughter. So just see that politics and personal get mingled in this, but then predominantly the discourse is political. And if Hamlet succeeds, then many heads will roll, and many people will fall, and that's the political implication of Hamlet succeeding. So Claudius sees to it that this possibility is erased for all time to come. So it's a political fight between the king and Hamlet, and king is suspicious, and he's the target of suspicion of the masses, and Hamlet has a popular support among the masses, because of which politics has spread actually to the grassroots also. So with this kind of a plot, you have the political discourse as a major one in the play, and some people call it a kind of drama, where there'll be scenes of fight, there'll be scenes of duels, etc. And there'll be deaths on the stage. There are 6 or 7 deaths on the stage, and most of these deaths can be given the character of political deaths. They are political murders, they are assassinations. You can call them whatever you like, but then politics is a game of different people pursuing their own interests, and when those interests clash a bit too harshly, then people take to arms, people take to violence, and they kill or they die at the hands of their opponents. So it's basically a political play in that sense, and you can say that this political melodrama is being played on the stage when Hamlet is viewed by the audience. The second discourse, because the country requires stability, and that stability is threatened, so political discourse is important, but then there are other things which are woven into the texture of the play. And the second thing is the family. Now in politics, families do not generally perform a big role. Politics means the policy making, the execution of the policies, the implementation of the policies, law, justice, courts, all these scenes are there when politics is being probed by a writer. But in this case, all those things are kept out, and family is brought in. Now let's see what kind of family structure is there in Hamlet. For instance, you have a mother there. It's very rarely in Shakespeare that there will be a mother active on the stage. Mostly, these mothers are missing. Mostly it is a male-dominated world that Shakespeare is presenting for the audience. But here there is a mother, and this mother has become the queen, and now she has got a new husband, and then she is also a wife. She was a wife when the earlier king, the previous king, lived, but she is the wife of the present king also. Then she has a son, and son is from the previous husband. So she will be acting on the stage with Hamlet vis-a-vis Hamlet being a son. Then there is a daughter, Polonius's daughter, which means that Polonius also has a family. Polonius's wife is not there, but he has a daughter, and she is a young, beautiful woman, and she is in love with, I'll come to that later, but then there is a daughter in the play. Then there is a father in the play. Polonius is the father of a daughter. So father of a son, father of a daughter, father of a son where the father is missing, and there is a stepfather. So these categories of relationship, mother, wife, son, daughter, father, stepfather, these play a very big role in the intermeshing of events in the play. And the king is using the mother against the son. He is using the son of his deputy, that is Polonius, against his own adversary. The deputy Polonius is using his daughter against Hamlet and in favor of the king. So one can say that the father is manipulating the attention of his daughter. The mother is confused. The mother of the son is confused. So she doesn't know whose side to take, whether to be with the king or with the son. She loves the son, and she has great regard for the king, because she doesn't know that this person is a murderer. So that way, these people remain confused all the time regarding the stance that they have to adopt in the play as father, daughter, sister, because there is a sisterly relation also. Polonius has a son and a daughter duo. So the son and daughter, and the son and the sister, the brother and the sister, they also have a kind of equation, and that adds to the richness of relationships in the play. So can politics and family be mixed? like this in plays as Shakespeare has done, I don't find evidence of this. There might be some dramas in which this would be the case, but then here they are completely interwoven in such a way that you can't separate one from the other. Then the third discourse after the family.
Sir, before we go further, just to interrupt you slightly, as you mentioned that the discourse of politics and the family here is there is an intermeshing of events, and they cannot be separated one from another. But is it possible that the domain of politics and the relation of politics and state operates without the say mention or intervention of family members, because it is the kind of politics that is happening is because one brother wants to use up the other brother. So is it also possible that they could be, say, divorced from one another? And because I just also wanted to add that it's a very topical idea, as you said, it's the most relevant to modern times, and even when we see plays or films, we tend to find similar plots.
That's true, and it's a very valid question you're asking, Urvashi, and I can add another reason in support of your argument, that in those days the king would always be from a family, and whenever the person became a king, the prince became a king, then his own family members also would turn against him in the 15th century and earlier. So that dimension is there. But here the family in this play appears to be, as you rightly say, that it's like the case that happens today. It's a family as if of the middle class.
Yes.
It's where the sister is there, it's a mother is there, and mother is divided into split into two parts. One is the mother, and she loves her son, at the same time she has regard for. So all these things are very close to us. So I would say that a family cannot be separated generally also, but in this case this family operates at a level where the goals are political, right, and the reality is emotion within the structure of the family. So that's the specific part, and that's what makes this play particularly attractive for us, in terms of theme. So I accept your this suggestion that this particular dimension is to be kept in mind, and that family should be seen as something that is distinct as well as related to the different sets of behavior presented in the play. So we can, the question is open, and we can go further into it as the discussion proceeds, and then viewers take to the third point, which is regarding outside the family, outside politics. There is a layer in the play of the youth. The people, middle-aged or old people are quite, are just a few. Polonius is supposed to be old. He has white hair. There is a mention of that. Claudius himself, was the younger brother of the previous king, so he belongs to the middle-aged category. But after that starts and there is a mother who is also middle-aged. These three people belong to one generation, but then there are sons, there are daughters, there are friends of the sons. There is no friend of a daughter except Hamlet himself, and this dimension is important because in the 1590s and 1600s. It was not generally visualized that there will be a category outside the family of young people, but this category is there, that they belong to future. In the feudal times and in the monarchical times also in England, the young people of the families will not be shown as generally performing a role vis-a-vis one another, and here they relate with one another. For instance, there is a kind of relationship between Horatio and Hamlet. Horatio is age-wise senior to Hamlet. Hamlet should be 30 years and Horatio would be 45 years. But they are friends. And they are such good friends. And this kind of friendship generally is not possible in the Elizabethan times. But then Hamlet looks up to Horatio as his friend, philosopher and guide. Whenever Hamlet is in trouble, then he must consult Horatio. And Horatio traveled all the way from another country when he heard of Hamlet's father's assassination. So he rushed to this place, and he has remained in the play till the end, which means that the friendship is of that intense level, where a 45-year-old young man or middle-aged man is here for the sake of a friend, for the sake of friendship, and he doesn't bother about hiding his identity. He doesn't want to hide his identity, that he has sympathy for Hamlet. You see, it's so very dangerous to be close to Hamlet in these circumstances. Anybody, will keep a watch on you, and if you are found difficult to handle, then you can be easily, done to death and all those things. So caution is thrown to wind so far as Horatio is concerned, and Horatio is all the time on the right side of Hamlet, and this friendship takes the play much beyond the Elizabethan period or the later period to the 20th century, where this kind of friendship is possible outside family. In fact, such friendships also become critical of the family relationships. So whom does one prefer, a brother or a friend? You see, this is a category. Well, then again there is a category that the prime minister's or the deputy's daughter is a young woman, and she is in love with Hamlet. It would have been all right if Hamlet's real father had been the king. Then the deputy would be very happy to be raised in status and to be the brother-in-law of the king. But now that the king has changed, and this king doesn't look kindly towards Hamlet, therefore the woman is gradually withdrawn from the scene by the father, and also under his instructions by the brother. But then, can she really withdraw? Because she is an individual, she is a woman, so she has a kind of respect for Hamlet. So on one side is the brother and father who want to take her out, but then on the other side there's a person whom she likes, and who has given gifts to her, and she responded very sweetly to him, and she is that way connected, linked with him emotionally. So these emotional bonds that get formed at the level of individuals, at the level of the youths, this is one of the important features of this play. And once again, if you have these emotional bonds where of course they go by the value system of the times, and they will be obedient to their superiors, but then if they are left to their own, then they would like to strike relationships outside the family structure. And this is what is happening in the play, that you are shown, and it's a tragedy. It's not a comedy. In comedy, this particular paradigm is presented, but when in a tragedy, these things are brought in. That there is a young man called Hamlet, and he is in love with a girl called Ophelia, a woman called Ophelia, and that the love is genuine, and the love is mutual, and that there is passion. People can be angry, and in anger they can take an action. So there are young people, there might be 5, 6 young people. So one of them can become angry and can start fighting with another, and the political is the political spectrum is directly or indirectly affected by this. So this young generation is quite effectively present in the play, and they have their own views, and the views can be critical. Hamlet, for instance, disagrees with his mother with respect to what he personally feels. He doesn't take dictation, doesn't take instructions from his mother. Laertes does, but then the father has to take care that Laertes is all the time also convinced of the stand that he's telling him to take. So this particular generation is there, and this dimension works throughout the play. It once again starts in the beginning. Youth, youthfulness, love, passion, friendship, these are the themes that are worked parallel to the theme of politics and family relations that I referred to. The fourth dimension.
Sir, I'm again interrupting you before we move on to another
Roshi,
point.
it's always welcome, because that's the way I would like to make clear my points better. Yes.
Thank you, sir. And sir, as you talked about the presence of young generation, that not only within the family but outside the family they are able to form friendships, say Hamlet's friendship with Horatio and Hamlet's love for Ophelia. And sir, as I was reviewing in my own mind, my own understanding of what I can recall of Shakespeare's plays, I was also able to see that perhaps a lot of interaction that happens between the young members happens between the family, whether it be young say sisters or brothers or cousins, but usually we do not find a lot of people coming in from outside.
Yes,
And is that a deliberate attempt by Shakespeare in this play?
I think so. Shakespeare seems to be making these characters break the shackles of the family. For Horatio is not connected with him at all at the family level. Then there are two people who have been friends as children of Hamlet. They are called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Yes.
And they are not of the princely background. Yes. So they are just there as functionaries in the state at the moment. But they are friends of Hamlet. Hamlet sometimes feels very sweet with them. Later on, he realizes that they have been set after him by the king, and then he becomes suspicious. And then, of course, in the course of the movement of the play, they also get killed. But then they were friends most of the time. Hamlet is able to strike a very close friendship, even with the players. Even with the actors, who came to perform a play in front of him. So that kind of dimension, that kind of paradigm where you like a person and you start discussing with him and feel happy with him. This dimension is there in the comedies. But here, in the very structure of politics that is at the center, if this thing happens, then this draws our attention quite palpably. Then another thing, I'm just because there is a paucity of time and I have to cover the entire text from different angles. So I would say that there is also the dimension, and a very, very strong dimension in the play. And viewers, I would like you to particularly focus upon this. And this is the dimension of the human individual. You see, in the Elizabethan period, this individuality was recognized and explored to an extent in the comedies or in some other plays also. But these individuals always remain structured in the politics of the family. These individuals did not come forward to present their own case in a manner that they would stand apart from others. So in fact, one could not think till the 16th century of individuals. They always played some roles, but they were something unto themselves. They would look inwardly. They would try to go over their own problems and their predicaments. That they will have clashes in their own minds. That they would not be clear about what is to be said and what is not to be said. And that they will talk to themselves. This particular tendency is used in great detail so far as this play is concerned. For instance, if one has to think of the human individual, the person who stands apart from others, from the group, from a particular function within the family or politics. Now, this person can look around critically, he can pass judgment on anything and everything, and he can also share his prejudices, his misconceptions, even his ignorances, his confusions with the audience, and he can say towards the end, well, I didn't understand. Now, this kind of a focus on the individual, which became the mainstay of fiction and literature, general literary enterprise, in the 19th century onwards, you have in the 19th century a large number of characters who have the psychological dimension. You have in the 20th century a whole genre called psychological novel. In criticism, you have the theme of psychological realism. Now, that realism, that psychological dimension is rooted, Shakespeare seems to be the pioneer of this when he talks about the human individual in the form of Hamlet here. So, Hamlet is facing battles outside himself with his uncle, with his mother, with the supporters of the uncle and the mother, with people in society, with the functionaries of the state, and and people on the street. This fight he is all the time waging with these people. At the same time, he is waging a fight within himself. For instance, when Hamlet's father's ghost appears on the stage, appears in the play, and the father informs him, the ghost of the father informs him that actually he was murdered. Hamlet, should he accept the version of the ghost? And there is a question, and Hamlet doesn't know how to refer to the ghost. Most people in the 16th century would straight away accept this, because they might have suspected that the father was killed, and then the ghost comes and they take ghost as real, and they just go and cut the head of the person who committed murder. And even today, in the 20th century world, etc., if one sees if one person sees something in the dream and that dream, confirms the suspicion, then the person's behavior is affected. But Hamlet, when he sees that he had a father whose resemblance in the form of a ghost tells him that he has been murdered, he starts doubting the ghost also. And in fact, he is, at some point of time, he also raises the question, is it a Christian ghost? Is it a human? Is it a ghost who is kind? Or is he the very manifestation of devil? Because devil also can come in this form and misinform you and put you off the path, off the track, etc. So Hamlet starts doubting even the very veracity of the ghost as a figure, and he starts asking the question, should he follow the ghost or not? This is one. Second predicament is, should he be with the girl whom he loved, the woman whom he loved? Should he be with his mother, who may not be aware of whatever happened behind the scene and what kind of a person she has married? Would he be should he be following the dictates of the new king, because he doesn't have any proof that the king murdered? And then finally he starts criticizing himself. The human individual who starts criticizing himself is a different kind of a figure. And Hamlet starts asking the question, am I right in accepting the situation as if it was a normal situation? My father is murdered, my mother is seduced by the uncle, and everybody, the whole world is set against me. Now, should I take action or not? And if he doesn't take an action, then he has to explain to himself why he is not taking action. Is he not guilty? And he, then he starts, analyzing his own mind. And Shakespeare is using the device of soliloquy, talking to oneself. So he talks to himself, and in fact, this play stands out, for its soliloquies, for the mental exploration of the individual who is sensitive and who is pressed hard by circumstances. So, in many places, I think 6 or 7 places, Hamlet goes apart from everybody else and he starts talking to himself. And these are the soliloquies that are the wonderful pieces of poetry, in this play. And these soliloquies give us certain insights into the working of Hamlet's consciousness. So one can say that the psychological analyses that started happening in the case of characters in literature in the 19th century onwards, those have their roots and their beginning in Hamlet's characterization by Shakespeare. So this kind of an individual who will look outwardly and inwardly, and who will weigh the pros and cons, and he'll be then finally confused, and he'll have to pay for the confusion. Then he might die just because he out of doubt he was not able to take a correct action, and he is going against the value of valor, value of family honor, etc. He should have taken action, he doesn't take action. So these things make him feel guilty, and the guilt takes the better of his mind, and finally Hamlet is caught in the web of his own psychological puzzles. So this kind of a character with an independent mind, with a mind that is in the process of growing, in the process of becoming aware more and more, this is something that is particularly important for this play. Now the soliloquies are the projections of Hamlet's mind, and they give us insights which are otherwise rare to get in plays of that time and even later. There is another person in the play who is also soliloquizing. He soliloquizes only once or twice, and that person is Claudius. Now imagine, of course, Shakespeare will be using it to a certain extent elsewhere also. The device of soliloquy, he does it for instance in King Lear. But then this play is dominated by soliloquies, and some people refer to this play as a play where a particular soliloquy occurs, and there have been whole articles on the soliloquies of Hamlet, and particularly that soliloquy, to be or not to be, that is the question. And in fact Hamlet is going into the aspect of suicide, into the aspect of killing himself, death. He is brooding on death, and all those things. So that shows, that Shakespeare has somehow identified the emergence of a particular consciousness which can be characterized as individual. This individual will not be seen like this in plays, before Hamlet, generally speaking. So one has to, and this is very modern. Most of us, today are caught in the web of circumstances, and we start thinking, and most of us can't even act. In fact, there are whole branches of human behavior which refer to inaction, just because one is being too much theoretical. And well, the blame can be also put at the door of Hamlet, that he is being too theoretical, and he is using different techniques in order to avoid the action. So this is a discourse that is there in the play, and this discourse, for instance, no soliloquy is ever available to Polonius. Polonius cannot write a soliloquy, cannot speak a soliloquy. Ophelia can sometimes perhaps speak a soliloquy, but Laertes cannot. The mother of Hamlet can speak, but she doesn't. But then these are the characters, those who suffer, those who are pained, they can start talking. But then these two people very clearly come forward and talk. Anything you would like to say on this?
Sir, it's definitely an aspect that one needs to pay careful attention to, and I'm thinking about the times that I had studied it, and I had probably not thought about it so much in depth about the importance of soliloquies. And you mentioned that it's also used in King Lear, but not as effectively and not as say the amount of importance that is given to it within this play. So in fact, our viewers would also be able to catch this point and perhaps go back to the play, which I would also like to do, sir.
Well,
and give it another read and pay importance to these aspects.
You are right. This is a point that should be, of course, in Shakespeare criticism this has been discussed, but then most of us, remain unaware of the importance of soliloquies. True. In Hamlet in particular, and other plays in general. Right. Then
sir, just another idea that comes to my mind, that you said that some are not are able to speak. They are able to speak through these soliloquies, and some characters are not able to speak. Yes. So that came as an interesting point to me, and I would just like to ask you a bit about that.
That is my feminism, coming through, because women have lots of pains to share with others, but they are not given a chance in the Elizabethan period and later, to speak out their minds. So anybody who suffers, anybody who is feeling helpless, would like to complain, and True. To whom to complain? So when I talked about some characters having the potential of speaking and soliloquizing, do not do so. They are both women. For instance, I think there are lots of pains and complaints, that a person like Gertrude would be trying to do, but she doesn't have a friend to share with, and she doesn't have that kind of individuality in her. If that were there, then she would have been confused regarding marrying this person. She may not have liked this person at all when he was her brother-in-law, but now that he is the king, and the moment he became the king, he proposed to her and she married him. So there must, and she had a grown-up son. So that kind of a dilemma she is not able to somehow cope with. But then there is a position, there is a situation in which she might have soliloquized. Ophelia has the same problem. She is a split personality. Yes. Initially, she was loved by Hamlet. Later on, she was rejected by Hamlet. Then she suffered. Then she went mad also, and she went mad on hearing that the father had died. All those things, and she started fantasizing about so many things. So I would say that Ophelia is closer a candidate for soliloquy, because in her fantasies, which are fantasies of the mad woman, she is somehow soliloquizing. But it's not soliloquy in the sense that she is talking when she is in senses, but that she is saying something which is in her subconscious, and that is coming out through her fantasies. So any suppressed person, and women were suppressed all the time, they would be a proper candidate for soliloquy. Absolutely. But Hamlet has that kind of sensitivity which is generally found in a woman. Hamlet, that way, that the modesty, the softness that is there in Hamlet and that is very close to a woman. So I don't. Somebody should also explore this area. What is that womanliness in Hamlet? That softness, that delicacy, that particular subtlety in Hamlet that is able to go into these questions at the level of his consciousness. So viewers, we have just 5 minutes or so left, and I'll just very briefly talk about the 2 or 3 other discourses in this time. Generally, Shakespeare's plots are quite taut, are quite strict. There are certain things which Shakespeare focuses upon. There are others he keeps out. But so far as this play is concerned, certain things from outside the plot also have been brought in order to expand the scope of, enlarge the scope of the play. And this also is peculiar to this play, and it's a kind of a discourse. When the court is, when the people in the court, when people of the nobility, when people around the king, they are involved in a fight, in a political fight, then are they aware that certain things outside their ambit also are happening? Most of them are not aware, particularly at that point of time. So most plays, in the Elizabethan times would be courtly fights. Would be fights, of people in the court. You have the history plays, you have other plays where the court scenes are very important, and people from different walks of life they fight at the level of the king and the administrative structure. But then here you have certain sections which have been brought in from outside to give a critical look at the goings on in the play. And I particularly pinpoint two. One is the world of players. The players have been brought in out of nowhere, as it were, out of the blue. Suddenly somebody says the players are on the way, and the players come. And these players were moving around the country Denmark, and Hamlet was once many years ago when he was a young man, when he was 20 or so, then he would spend his time with these players, these actors, and the actors group has come forward, and then this actors group is used by Hamlet to find out the truth about the king in the play that they present, which is called Mousetrap. And when these players come, then Hamlet is very happy. He interacts with them, he directs the play partly, he also writes a few lines for the play that they will enact in the court, and for some time Hamlet is himself, which means most of the time he is not himself. Most of the time he is performing a role. But when these actors come from outside, then he becomes himself. Now see, there are lots of ironies in this. A person is not his real self when he is confronting the real people. But when a person confronts the artists who are actually presenting somebody else's role, then he becomes real. Brilliant. So see the ironies being created very consciously and intelligently by Shakespeare through this reference to the other world which is outside the court. And the second is much more telling. The second world is much more effective, and that is the world of grave diggers. Grave diggers who are digging grave for Ophelia have no knowledge of what is going around with these people. When somebody dies, then they take it professionally. There is a brother who will come and he will jump into the grave, and these people will laugh at him. But what kind of a fool is he? And he is Polonius' son. He is not an ordinary person. He is the prime minister's son, and Hamlet is fighting on the other side. And Hamlet's greatness also disappears and evaporates in front of the grave diggers. In fact, one of the grave diggers, digs up a particular part of the skeleton, the skull, and starts saying that this skull belongs to that person. He knew the person when he was alive, and Hamlet recognizes that the person whose skull it is was actually very kind to him, and he played in his lap. So imagine this world, from the court, from outside the court. This also is brought in, and there is a long description of it in the play. There is a whole scene given to the grave diggers. So these two particular instances of the players who enact a play, and of the grave diggers who come from as if another world and who have a view, then this is so. I would, for paucity of time, I would not be able to, go through the other things. So I finish here, and I say that all these discourses that Shakespeare is able to bring into the play, they add to the richness and value of this play and make this play outstanding in most respects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and certainly, as you said, of course, all these elements go on to enrich the play and, of course, make it very pertinent and to the modern times, as we discussed at the beginning. So, thank you so much, sir, again for being here today, and thank you, viewers, for watching. Have a wonderful day ahead.